At least 5 people today have told me I look so much like my mother in the sari. I think that's hilarious because, considering the subject of this talk, I will never be my mother. I'm sure you're all wondering why. Why does she not want to be like her mother? Does she hate her mom? Does her mom hate her? What did her mom do to her that was so evil? Let me tell you something that might sound shocking considering the subject of this talk. My mom is my best friend. I think the most evil thing that she's done to me is saying, "Give me a bite of that," and then proceeding to eat half of the chocolate cake she clearly said she didn't want 5 seconds ago. It's okay, Mom, I forgive you. But if you take my cake again, there will undoubtedly be a sequel to this talk. My point being, it wasn't her malicious deeds that inspired the idea I'm about to propose today. You see, I grew up as an only child with a single working mother, and her job took us all around the country. So I changed schools as often as you probably change your bed sheets. I couldn't complain about the fact that I had finally found friends, or that I had set down roots, or that the next city that we were going to didn't have a kingdom of dreams. Because even at the age of 7, my conscience was ironclad. I knew better than to throw such tantrums at the woman who'd been working anywhere between 12 to 16 hours a day to give me everything and anything that I asked for. So, I made the best of a bad situation. I became the most adaptable and fluid person you'd ever meet. Within 5 minutes of having a conversation with a person, I would adapt to their lingo. If the kids in my class needed a funny friend, I could be that. If they wanted to only hang out with the cool kids, I would learn to mold myself into a person that they thought was cool. I didn't realize it at the time, but at the ripe age of 7, my chronic need for pleasing people had just begun. Now, this wasn't always a bad thing. My need for seeking approval actually improved my work ethic tremendously and made me a perfectionist so that no one had any reason to complain. This need for pleasing clung on to different individuals over the years of my life, often the people I idolized the most. When I played competitive basketball, it was attached to my coaches. When I joined a new school, it was attached to a group of kids that were considered popular. When I took a really difficult course in school this year, it grasped tightly onto a teacher who had never given a 7 out of 7 in her entire teaching history. Funnily enough, the people I idolized the most were also the ones whom I couldn't get a pat on the back from. And while this need shifted from one individual to another as life thrust me into different contexts, the one person it never let go of was my mom. It makes sense, don't you think? Arguably, this was the most important and most consistent relationship in my life. I don't think we ever think about or give enough merit to how much our parents really do for us. Skipping work to attend parent-teacher meetings, neglecting their sleep when their child is having nightmares, even choosing careers that let them spend more time with their children. My mom did all of that and more. She didn't grow up with a silver spoon in her mouth. Sure, she had a roof over her head, clothes on her back, food on the table. But our entire family subscribed to a very conservative belief system. One where men were the breadwinners, and women were simply meant for the cooking, raising the children, and tending to their husbands' needs, of course. My grandparents were a little bit more progressive. They let her go to college. They treated her and her brother as equals. They even let her pick the man that she wanted to marry. My mom was only 24 when she made that decision. And unfortunately, she picked the wrong one. After 9 years of being together, my mom decided to leave my dad and raise me all on her own. Now, this might not sound like a very extraordinary thing, but this decision went against everything our family had raised her to believe. With the education that she had, she was able to support me, herself, and my grandparents. And we've lived a very comfortable life. But in the process, she was forced to become hyper-independent. She had to be. She had a little girl to raise, and that had always been her priority. So financial and emotional independence came out of necessity. She was always a quick learner. She adapted this way of living very quickly, and I admired her so much for that. Admiring her, watching her be independent in this way, every time I uncovered a new piece of the puzzle of her divorce story, my need for pleasing people amplified. It began with subtle mannerisms, lurking around her room when she was upset with me, analyzing her micro expressions, overthinking the tone of her voice. Eventually, these subtle mannerisms turned into an entire framework that was based off of getting her approval. If she thought I was going out too much, I would self isolate. If she didn't like the people I was hanging out with, I would cut them off immediately. If she thought I wasn't giving something my all, you guessed it, I would go from 0 effort to 100 insanely quickly. I became aware of what I was doing soon enough, but I decided not to do anything about it because most of us don't admit it, but validation from the people that we crave it from the most feels too good to let go of. But then, as it always does, came the awakening. As I mentioned earlier, I played competitive basketball. It was a sport I loved dearly for many years, and I won various awards for it too. But with the community that I was surrounded by and the political interests of my academy, this love was buried deep within. So deep, in fact, that I couldn't find it. Couldn't latch onto it to keep me going in the tough times, because there are always tough times as an athlete. But what keeps you going is your love for the craft. What kept me going a little bit longer was my mom's love for watching me play. At the time, I couldn't think of a better feeling than her telling me she was proud of me after a good game. She skipped work countless times to drive me to practice or to come and watch my games. She even live streamed them on Facebook, and for her sake, I hope none of you ever find them because you might be able to see the game well, but all you can hear is her yelling at me or the referees. Anyways, her love for watching me play, her passion for seeing me play, and her telling me that she could see me playing to my full potential, I didn't want to let go of that. I didn't want her to think of her daughter as a quitter because she had never quit. And I latched onto that to keep me going. Anytime I'd hint at quitting the sport in conversation, she would reject the idea immediately, directly or indirectly, at least in the way that I interpreted her actions. Which was a fair response, considering I wasn't telling her how truly bad it was, because being candid and vulnerable about my struggles is something that does not come easily to me. She needed emotional stability and independence in her life. And there's no debate about the fact that these are very important traits to have because you have to be emotionally strong. You have to be resilient to get through life. But you don't have to do it all by yourself. You don't have to carry your burdens alone. You don't have to navigate every path alone. It's okay to rely on the people that you love, the people that love you. And when I realized my mom was forced to accept this way of living, this hyper independence is the only way, well, honestly, I felt a bit sad. That was also the moment I realized that I did not have to take the path that she would take. I did not have to emulate her, to please her, or to make her happy. So, I quit. I know some of you may not agree that that was the right decision to make. Well, you wouldn't be the first ones. I've heard all variations of the thought. Stop making excuses, stop being dramatic, you don't have what it takes. But here's the deal. The things I valued in life were much different than what anyone, including what my mom, valued. She needed resilience, emotional independence, and that's great. And I'm sure some of you need those things, which is great as well. But our values not only define the way that our life continues, but the way that we experience life also shapes our values. I tried to adapt the values of my mom without adapting them to my context, to my life. Therefore, her best qualities became my worst. I could throw a bunch of intellectual arguments at you and tell you that a research study found that parents who were closer to their children were more likely to embody their traits, or that historically women were seen as these delicate damsels. So, really, hyper independence is only a natural feminist response. Oh no, I'm already doing it, aren't I? But I want you to imagine this. Imagine a potter and his apprentice, both molding their individual lumps of clay on their wheels. The apprentice learns from the potter, applying his techniques and styles. And at first, their sculptures appear identical. But what the apprentice soon realizes is that they have two different wheels. How far will applying the same procedure take him? You control the steering wheel of your life. It's not a bad thing to have the same beliefs, values, or opinions as your friends or your parents or anyone else, as long as you decide that that is what's right for you. You don't have to emulate the people that you admire because you want to please them or you want what they have, because we all are dealt different cards in life. So playing the same bluffs is not going to make us all victors. It's a very difficult thing for someone who survives on people's approval to take a step that many disapprove of. But the most uncomfortable decisions are often the best ones to make. I don't please my mom anymore. Not in the traditional sense anyways, because I know that that is not what she wanted for me either. She wanted me to do what was right for me. Ironically, I ended up doing exactly what she did, making a decision that went against everything my family had raised me to value. But I know that that was the right decision for me to make. There are infinitely many ways in which you can mold yourself, and the shape that you choose to take is up to you. All I have to say is, make sure you're the potter and not the clay. Thank you.